is wonderful.
We love it too.
Yeah.
Outlaws do advocates, we speak the
Wow.
truth. Got a mic in our hand, yeah, we're breaking loose. From behind the bars, the breaking glass roofs. We're telling our stories and dropping mad truth. Yo, it's George, Jesse, and Jeremy on the mic. 3 outlaws on a mission, man, it feels so right. We were doing hard time, now we're dropping rhymes. Turn the hustle into hope, redefining our prime. From the prison yard to podcast fame, taking back our power, no more shame. We used to wear numbers, now we wear names. Laughing at our haters, cause we changed the game. We got Todd Wade in the house for 26 years.
Well, thank you.
All right. Welcome. It's Jesse's favorite song ever. It's the Outlaws to Advocates theme song. Took us forever to get it. Welcome, everybody. I'm excited tonight because for me personally, coming out of prison, I walked straight into employment. And the reason I was able to walk straight into employment was because of the Second Chance Center and because of my executive director at the time, Hayley Winterberg, who is here with us today. And it's really awesome to kind of come full circle from working from Hayley to becoming friends with Hayley to now just trying to change the world with Hayley. It's awesome to have you. My name's George Nolan, Outlaws to Advocates. This is my co-host.
I am the co-host, Jesse, and I'm thankful for Hayley as well.
And the song.
And the song.
And the
which I
song.
can go the rest of my life without having to hear again.
The song
is
psychs him up every
terrible.
time.
It does.
The song is terrible.
Awesome. Want to introduce yourself?
My name's Jeremy, and reentry advocate and a blessed friend to my counterparts here, and to Hayley Winterberg, whose genuine authenticity is something that stands out when you meet her.
Awesome. And who are you, young lady?
I don't know who I am anymore. My name is Hayley Winterberg, and been kind of in the advocate space in a variety of different components for 18 years here soon. Seems wild to think it's been that long. I started in kindergarten. It's true.
pretty fucking
Run
close.
in the yard. Run in the yard, huh?
But I've just always had a passion for helping. I had a rough upbringing and wanted to do something different with my life and have a different path. And now that I'm a mom, I give my kids a different future. And so however I get to do that in this world is what I want to do.
Awesome.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. She definitely walks the walk. I remember right after our interview process, I think you had agreed to hire me after I bothered you enough. And you had said, well, you had told me I could look at something as far as your history and your coming up in the advocacy space. And I went down that Hayley rabbit hole, and man, it's impressive.
Yeah.
You talk about 12, 13 years old, running youth movements and traveling the country and on a speaker circuit of sorts, as a child. And then growing up, following through with the education and becoming a leader and an expert in the recovery space. Like, you've been a huge mentor to me to this day. I got anything access related, anything ethics related, anything life related. I call Hayley and get some usually good advice. Most of the time.
Sometimes some lectures
But
too.
absolutely. And I definitely need a lecture here and there. So it was cool today. We hit 2 different units, Jeremy, Jesse, and my friend Boo down in Tucson. And, it's tiring. It's a long day, but getting to come back here, sit at the table and do this with you, it's phenomenal, especially someone who was comfortable enough in this space to get some weirdo who just came out of prison, pick them up and take them underwear shopping with a straight face. Right? The only one who had anxiety in that Target was this guy. I'm like, did she just tell me to buy underwear? Okay, I'll buy underwear.
That's so good.
I got underwear, socks, like that. They looked out for me. And you talk about second chance hiring or fair chance hiring. You talk about that and the stuff that comes with it that people don't think about, they thought about. The Peer and Family Career Academy, where Hayley was the ED at the time, took everything into consideration, right? It was really cool just to be welcome there and supported. And you are usually the one who leaves your phone on not silent, but tonight it's me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was such a great way to start and to have you in my life and have you in our lives and have you sitting here at this table and showing up at parole hearings, parole orientations. It's awesome.
For me, as I hired you on, right, you were one of the first ones I've done straight out of prison. Most folks, they've been out in the community for a little while and have gotten their feet under them a little bit. But I remember so vividly when my dad was released, how much we had to rebuild everything from scratch and how overwhelming that shopping was, and how he had to show up for job interviews but didn't have the clothes for job interviews, right? And how he would get the job and he was mostly doing like manual labor stuff after his experience because he couldn't work in his field anymore. And you know, you need the steel-toed boots and you need the special pants and you need all the things that he couldn't get. So it was one of the things I made sure that I was like, if George's going to do it, he's going to be able to have everything he needs so he can feel confident. Because there's nothing worse than being in a room knowing you've got some stuff, right, in your past and you feel like you're not dressed the part, right? That's something I went through starting at 12, 13. I was poor. I didn't have the access and the means to get the things I needed. But here I was standing next to CEOs and telling psychiatrists how they should treat kids better in my ripped jeans and shoes that are talking. Like, you know, it just gave me a different viewpoint on making sure folks have what they need.
That's awesome, Hayley. We had a discussion a few minutes ago before we started this podcast because we all work in the reentry field and all of us look up to you.
I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, I asked you, you know, what you think I could do to add value to myself and what do you think would be important to grow in this field? And you said education.
That's right.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that? I know that you're educated.
I'm overeducated. So I went and I got 2 masters, right? The second one was a little bit of happenstance. I loved the topic and it was like a year and a couple months to get it. And I was like, well, that's a no-brainer. For me, school is a safe place, and I know that's not the case for everyone, but what I've seen time and time again is you can have the best life experience, and you can get places with that, and I've really learned that over the years too. But also I've seen how much further folks can go when they have the degree, when they get the credential, when you get that fancy piece of paper that says, hey, I know my stuff now. And it's a good journey, right? Like I know in both of my master's as well as my undergrad in human services, I learned a lot about me and was processing my life experiences, right? When I took human services, there was an addictions course. And I remember like having full-on debates with the instructor because I was the only person in the room who had lived experience of being in recovery. And I was like, yeah, that's not how it works. Sometimes you hit rock bottom and you just keep digging until you find a new bottom.
Yeah.
Like, you know, sometimes, you know, you got to relapse multiple times before you get it, right? And maybe you didn't lose all of your progress every relapse. Sometimes you just took a little step back and you get back together. I remember having those debates in my public administration, really understanding like how so much of my life was impacted by terrible public policy. Like that's where our system is often broken at. We create these laws over things that are wild, right? And especially when we look at substance use charges compared to other charges, sometimes you're getting more time for that than if you did something violent. That just doesn't make any sense. So in my leadership, I learned how to be a leader. I kept being thrown naturally into leadership roles and positions in this world, but I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Like my first team, like I had to issue all of them an apology because I was like, "Ooh, I was a bad boss." Like, like
that's okay, right?
So that's really interesting because, like, when we look at your education from GCU and navigating personal experience growing up, you know, healthcare and access and all that is a very political landscape. And I was just curious, is how did you utilize your education and personal experience to really create that systemic change and where you felt like now I'm turning the tide and I'm getting somewhere?
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting journey when you have lived experience, right? I think for many of us, when we start out doing this work, whether it's peer work or behavior, whatever it looks like, we lean heavily on our story and our experience because it's so much on it. One of the things I found is now I evolve on using collective stories, using data and using how do we leverage these politics? How do we think strategy to make these system change that it's less about me and my experience and what I've gone through and overcome, but how do I now help a collective? And then there's still times where I've got to say, you know what, hold on, we need to have a human moment. And this is what that how it would have impacted me. Just a couple years ago, I was working on a health plan, and we were all sitting in this table. Literally, all the top people. I was probably the lowest ranked person in the room, and they were talking about making a change to our system that would have directly meant I lost services when I was a kid, and I had to be like, "Whoa, we got to talk about this." Like, I wouldn't be in this room today if it wasn't for those very services you're talking about. Right. And so learning when and where do you share that story? When and where do you leverage that? And when and where do you pull up other pools of experience and say, you know what, this degree is what we're going to leverage today? Because we're all one whole. Like, there's never a point where I can cut off my life experience. That's always impacting the decisions I make today and how I move forward. But it doesn't have to be the bright neon sign over my head in the same way it was when I was younger.
Yeah, it's funny because everything happens for a reason, right? You coming on here is literally for a reason. I was at an event the other day, and there was a few lived experience people there, and one of them's, I don't want to say further ahead, but further along on his journey. And I noticed in that conversation, while most of us were talking about like our lived experience and what this looks like, he was more solution focused and more collective. And I heard that in his shares and in his inputs to the conversation. And I called him afterwards, and I was like, I want to be where you're at, man. And he told me, he's like, yeah, he goes, if you've been out of prison, for X amount of time, and you still sound like you just got out of prison, you're not growing. He's like, that's why I invited you into this space, because this is more for guys like you. 'Cause I just got out. He goes, and then guys like me, because I'm moving further along. And not in any kind of judgment way, but then for you to talk about that here and kind of reiterate that and bring that point home. I had actually said something to my girlfriend about it too when I got home. Like, man, the way he was talking, you can see like the growth in him, and it's something that really stood out to me about the, and you just hit it on the head with the collective aspect of things and what it looks like, rather than solely just this is what I've been through.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to see that.
I think there's often a journey we watch folks go through, and some folks stay at a certain level, and that's okay. And we need everybody to have their experience, right? But I think a lot of the times we start as me, and I'm going to get my story and I want to share. And then if you do things like peer support and you start to realize, oh, actually, there's members I worked with for years that never even knew my story, because it was we're walking this road together. We're figuring this out together as peers, right? And then you start to move into decision-making roles, as you mentioned earlier, right? Where you start to have that and you start to see that there's a collective, that it's system-based thinking, that it's solution-based thinking that you've got to really pull from. Now, you still have that lived experience where, like, the things I advocate and align myself with today are because I directly had some sort of engagement, right? I'm interviewing for jobs right now. Every company I'm in the interview process with, I've interacted with in my life journey in some way, shape, or form, because I want to give back and make a difference to the very things that made a difference in my life. And that's how we continue to move forward.
Extremely important. And just the fact that we have you here, because you're talking about interviewing for jobs. I've seen what your calendar looks like. And the fact that you do have this time to come over and do a podcast on a Wednesday at 7:00. That's something super to be grateful for, because I know once you do get moving in whatever direction you're deciding to go, after this, I'm glad we got this opportunity to get you in here and to talk and to chop it up. What do you think the number one issue is going on right now in this community, in healthcare, in behavioral health, peer support?
I think there's, normally I'd say one issue, but there's two right now. I think we have to be honest about the impact of politics within our system, right? And as we look at potential funding cuts and being on board and consulting with numerous organizations right now, there's a lot of organizations that do the work that make our people successful that are terrified and that are worried about how they're making payroll, if they're going to have to cut programs, if they're going to lose all of their funding, majority of their funding, right? It's a scary time. Now, my hopeful side in me is like, someone's going to stop that. Something's going to happen, right? Hopefully some donors will step up. But I also think as a community, we have to step up. If there's a nonprofit that you love and support, you've got an extra $5 after you've bought groceries, go give it to that nonprofit because they need it right now, right? They need every extra bit that we can, because it's not just the services that they provide, but it's many of them have people with lived experience that they're employing, right? This has a much massive ripple effect then, and we're losing some of our top industry experts, right? A ton of people from Health and Human Services, SAMHSA, that I worked with for years when I was doing this work nationally, and these people are amazing, right? I look up to them, I learn from them, I ask them questions, and now they're unemployed, right? And that's going to have a huge amount of knowledge loss within our system and could potentially set us back into something I'm quite concerned about. Normally, my biggest concern within our system is ethics.
Right.
It is an ongoing conversation, right? We watch staff not be trained properly and they're set up to fail. You know, when we're doing this work, it's hard to learn those boundaries, especially if you're coming from recovery movements where you answer your sponsee's call in the middle of the night. You're doing service work on nights and weekends, but when you put a peer in a peer role, you put even a case manager, right? And you still feel like you want to answer that call, but if you do, you're going to burn yourself out, right? You're going to start to blur those lines, and we don't talk enough about it in our system. We think if we send someone through a click-through Relias training, that somehow they're going to understand what appropriate ethics and boundaries are, but it's much more than that, right? The recent experience at an employer where I watched everything from the bottom up be unethical behavior, how they built, how they ran programming, how they talked to one another, right? At the core of it was ethics, and they just didn't even know. It had just been that way for so long that they couldn't see anything different. And so it's a huge issue that we have within our system that we want to kind of gloss over and pretend it's not there, but it's an issue.
So everybody should grab the ACA Code of Ethics tonight, read it, study it, highlight it, send us questions.
There we go.
Yeah, ethics it's huge. We see it everywhere. We talked about quality of care at certain places earlier, and you see it, and it's almost unbelievable, and yet it's still allowed to continue. And then there's the places that kind of look glossy, and then you step inside there, and it's not what it seems. Or you talk to a member that came out of there, and it's not what it seems. And I think that's, especially with the lived experience, we can get a little bit more of the truth, or at least their perspective, which is what the fuck matters, what their experience was like, and this happened and that happened. It's definitely under talked about. Everybody's terrified to say anything about it, talk about it. It's uncomfortable. It's this, it's that. It's integrity. You either have ethics or you don't. There's no gray area there, and I think that's why why it becomes such a taboo topic.
Yeah.
So how are you enjoying your downtime? Would you consider this downtime for you?
I mean, it's been a mixture, right? I was incredibly blessed to have consulting contracts literally within an hour of leaving a former employer. And so I immediately had work lined up for me. But also it's different work, right? I had come from working at organizations where I was working 80-hour weeks sometimes, right? And I was all the way from sun up to sundown. I was chugging away on my computer to suddenly having time to spend some time with my kids again, right? To have time to read books. Like, I had forgotten how much I love to read. Holy moly, I thought I was settling for this audiobook stuff as I was working, but like, it just isn't the same as flipping a page, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it also taught me so much about my value, right? And what am I willing to accept, right? And as I'm going into these interviews with these organizations, I've been really intentional about trying to make sure I find a place that I can be me, that is going to support my work-life balance that I need moving forward. But it also is helping me really figure out what is it that I want to do, right? Jesse was over here, well, what should I do? I don't know. And I was like, I don't know either. We're figuring that out together, right? It's given me a different look. I have spent so much of my time and career in the lived experience space, and yeah, at health plans, and yeah, in this different components, but also realizing I think I've got more to give in this world than just staying in the peer and family support space. Like, what else can I do to make an impact? I'm still using that experience, but maybe it's not
on a real macro level.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like spreading your wings. Like, what's the next step?
correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's been an interesting like journey of downtime. I, in my entire life, have never had this much downtime. Like, I've been working since I was 12. So it has been a wild journey to have like 3 months of like maybe half the workload of normal. I worked 3 jobs for many years. And so it's a wild journey to be like, all right, I guess I'm just planning some 5Ks and helping a CEO get some stuff done. All right.
So it's funny that you call downtime going home to 3 kids and being a full-time mom.
Yeah.
That's downtime.
That's a cakewalk.
That's easy.
So your education, and we kind of like go back to that, like, so education, working 3 jobs, and building a family, all at once.
Yeah.
Okay. So for all of our women out there, right? Like, and men, because we need it too.
All 3 of them.
Yeah. How give us some encouraging insight when those times where I would imagine you had those dark moments, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. If you want to share in part what that looked like, that's great. But as somebody who's navigating, like, all 3 of us are considering and are going to school, right? We work, right? And it's like, at the end of the day, where's the time, right? So how does one strategize, and how did you make it through all that?
It was really hard at times. Like, I can't lie, right? I started school luckily young. However, I took a massive gap. I remember actually I had been unenrolled in school for about 2 years. So I had gotten my associates and then was out of school. I had dropped out of ASU because I had been homeless. They were not supportive. And I remember I'd gotten housed again and was working full time. And I called my dad and said, "Hey, Dad, I'm pregnant." His response was, "When you enrolling back in school?" I was like, "I just told you I'm pregnant. What the hell do you mean? When am I enrolling back in school? Like, I got to go prepare for this baby." And he said, "No, you're going back to school." And my dad was a tough cookie, and I didn't argue with that man very much. So I did. I enrolled back in school. And thank God I did, right? Because he was right. If I would have chosen to just focus, I would have never made the time. It would have never happened. And it was wild. I was a single mom from the moment my kid was born. So that meant I was working 2 jobs, going to school and holding my baby. There was moments in his early childhood that I still have the mom guilt and shame. Because the only time I saw him was I picked him up. We did bath time. We went to bed. He slept in my bed because I was like, at least I'm going to get to hold my baby while we sleep.
No.
Wake up, drop him off so he could be watched and go to work. And that's how we lived life. And it was tough. It was tough, but also being able to look at my kid when I walked across the stage and got that degree, and knowing my son now is 11 and we're having conversations about education, and he's wicked smart too. And like, buddy, you can do it, but you got to be willing to do the work. Like, you've seen me doing this work, so you can do it too. I also had to figure out what's my priority right now and find programs, right? My master's, I went 1 night a week. And most of the time I was doing my homework while I was in that class. Because that's what I had to do. I had to make things work. And there was times, I don't recommend this strategy, but that's what I had to do. I had to look at those assignments and say, okay, when are these assignments due? What's happening in my work life? What's happening in my personal life? Okay, I've got my son's birthday party and I've got a work trip. That paper isn't going to get done that week. Not happening, right? So I had to take my perfectionism that I wanted straight A's on every single class to be like, you know what? C's to get degrees. For the record, I had a B average. So
Hey, it's your story.
I was this close to still making the honor society, but that was a tough choice, right? There was a lot of times that I was crying, right? And we try to have this view in this world that somehow it's all going to be balanced. Just balance it all. Well, that's a crock of shit. Right?
Thank you.
You just have to be willing to say, what's my priority right now and why, right? When I was working those jobs and I was going to school and that was my priority over my son, I was doing that for my son, for my kid's future. Because I did those things, he lived in the same house his whole life since he was 9 months old, right? He has never experienced, like I did, having the lights off, having the water off. This kid thinks me being able to say no to some rides at the Renaissance Festival is the worst thing that's ever happened to him. Right? And that's just a different life. And so I had to do that hard work so we could get to that point, right? Where I've been unemployed since December, my bills have been paid.
Right.
Right? Because I did the things and set up myself and built the connections and the relationships to do so, and still made sure my family, I pedal to the metal on work and pedal to the metal on my kids, right? If that means I'm not on social media, oh well. If it means I'm not, binge watching TV shows. I mean, there was years that I was like, I don't know what's on TV. What are you talking about? Some cool new show. I don't know. That's great. I'm never going to see that show.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just figuring that out. Like, how do you fill your cup? My kids, that's not work to me. That's filling my cup.
Absolutely.
And all that is like, and thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing some of that stuff in part, because this is exactly what we talk about all the time, is how uncomfortable can it get? Because that's where real growth and change happens. And it's a true testament to that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I was kind of not complaining, but I was talking to one of my coworkers at work. I was like, man, I got this stuff going on. I got these new responsibilities. I got this math and science class. And I'm like, kind of got anxiety. He's like, bro, that means you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you're uncomfortable, right?
Now let's put a baby in your belly, George.
That's where you're fucking supposed to be. That I couldn't imagine. That I couldn't imagine. But it's pretty, because you're talking about the school, right? And you're a big label person, right? Not using labels and the power in words and all that. And today, when we were in those groups, one of my friends just came on, a high school buddy, and we were in high school together. He was in those other classes, right? I don't know what they were called then, but they weren't a nice term. They were stigmatizing and all that, right? And those are the classes he was in. And we had a guy in group today say that he's got a learning disability and he's got ADHD and he's putting all these labels on himself. And I was like, well, you learn differently. You just need to figure out what that different looks like, what your learning style is, even if that means studying an extra 10 hours a night, whatever that is that you have to do to learn. My buddy that I was talking about, he was in those classes, right? The other ones. And guess what? He became an attorney. And now he's 50-something years old. And I think we're both going to be 51 this summer, actually. He's studying for his second bar in a different state, and just put all that stuff out of his head, sat down at that table, figured out how to learn, and put it to work rather than worrying about what the label is. And it's awesome to hear it. And then the peer supported me. Somebody else who made a comment asking us, what do you guys think about guys that are moving forward that don't work a program, they're doing it on their own? And I'm like, you're doing it on your own? You don't have family, you don't have friends, you don't have supports, you're not here listening to this podcast. Where's the on your own, man? You're surrounded by love. You're definitely not on your own, so don't feel like that.
I'm now a believer of the 12 steps, but I would actually say early on my recovery, because mind you, I was trying to get sober as a child still. I started using really young. And I remember trying to walk into a meeting, and they were like, no. You are a child. That's
the
not
park
happening.
is over there.
Correct, right? And I realized I was probably coming from a place of love and protection, but they didn't realize I probably had better stories than half of them, right? I'd already gone through some stuff. I was kidnapped literally at weeks old across the border to Mexico. So, I got the stories, baby. They started from the get-go.
Super early.
Right from the gate, I had trauma. And so I know that they were trying to protect me, but because of that, I was done with 12 step. People would preach the steps and be like, I'm so glad that works for you. You can keep that. So when I did end up getting sober, it was pull it up by my bootstraps, right? At that time, our system had, here's some counseling, here's some meds. Well, I couldn't talk about what was really happening in counseling because I didn't want to go into care. So, all right, I guess I'm going to sit here and bullshit.
Comcare system.
I was VO. I'm a little bit younger than Comcare.
Is it so? When I was in St. Luke's when I was 7 and Charter when I was 13, that was, and I'm 49 now, so that was VO2 then, right?
Might have been Comcare.
Might have
I'm
been
a baby.
I'm a baby, she said.
We should play the game of guess how old Hayley is and see how wrong they are, George.
Let me ask you this, Hayley. There's something I wanted to bring up. So you had mentioned that pretty much for the longest time, you've been going 80 hours a week, you know, getting your education, getting better, taking care of your kids, working, just doing everything. Is there anything that you would do differently now looking back?
Yeah, for sure. One of the things, you know, when I decided to leave the last job, that was a really tough decision. George knows. I called him that night, and I was a mess, hot mess express.
That's when I knew we were close.
Yeah, that's when I was like, I think we've actually hit the friend threshold, and he's on the list of people I'm calling. But one of the things I realized is during that 60 days, I was working as soon as the sun came up in my office at home. Then I would hit the road and drive an hour and a half to the office and work until 8 o'clock. And the only reason I left the office at 8 was because if I'm not home by 9, my husband can't make it for his graveyard shift. And sometimes then I'd still sit there at the couch or the dining room table and send in emails. I miss that time with my kids, and for nothing good came out of it, right? All of those other times I worked like that, I built some cool programs. I made a difference in people's lives. Like, I had forward momentum that made it worth it, that I was able to bring my kids to the conference that they had watched mom plan, that they had helped me pack the boxes for, right? So that's the other thing is, while I worked like that, I brought my kids involved. On Saturday, I went to a conference and my oldest kid went with, right? And so I just figured out how to do it and versus or. But I remember looking at my son as I was crying in this experience, and just the amount of like, that was for nothing. I missed 2 months of your life for nothing this time. I will never make that mistake again. I will never do that again, because I've got 7 more summers before he's an adult.
No. And that's no, I'm not minimizing anything. It's just it's a testament to your sharpness, right? Because learning that in 2 months, it can almost be considered almost pain-free when you look at some other people who have just wasted sometimes decades in a dead-end job, doing stuff that makes them miserable. Even put it on me, right? In my addiction, I gave 17 years in prison before I realized, hey, I only got so many summers left. Now I'm the only one who's got a few summers left. You know, my grandson's got a bunch ahead of them, but we gave that away, and you were able to pick that up and to learn that in 2 months and to land on your feet and to say, let's just enjoy the time, figure it out, and move forward. I remember that conversation. I remember that night, and I remember just sitting at my desk when you called, and you're you got your shit together, right? You got a good head on your shoulders.
Sometimes.
Absolutely. But it just goes, we're all human, right?
Yeah.
We're all going to go through different experiences. We're allowed to feel, first of all, we're allowed to fucking make mistakes, right? No one's fucking perfect. We're allowed to feel things. We're allowed to be upset, but we're also having the coping skills, reaching out for friends, for support, having those conversations. Hey, I'm the person who's got my shit together. I can't tell anybody what's going on, because that's a real thing too for some people. But you reached out. You had your little circle of people. You talked to them. You figured stuff out. And now you're on a fucking podcast just doing amazing stuff, enjoying your downtime.
Yeah, this has got to be one of the best highlights coming in 2025 for you, is being on this podcast.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And our 3 viewers are going to love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know. What am I going to do? Because I listen every week.
So you're only down to 2 viewers.
I'm a super fan.
We got you and Aaron Yeager as our super fans. We had Aaron on, was it last week or 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a pretty good lineup. We're not going to talk about who's coming until they get here, because sometimes when we put it out there, then people don't show up or shit happens.
Yeah.
But the next couple of weeks, you know, started kind of with Aaron and with you. We got a good group of people coming on here.
Have you ever met Aaron, Haley?
I think in passing. Yeah. I
I'll
think
have to
here and there.
connect you guys.
You've seen her on here, right, Aaron? She's an EMDR therapist from Jersey.
I think so.
Super cool. She's been sober
She's
for like
like-
8 years. Still goes to 5 meetings a week. Like,
Wow.
yeah,
That's some commitment.
yeah,
That's some
she's
commitment
she's
for
all.
sure.
She was the
Clinical director.
clinical director at
For-
Axiom,
for-
and now she's got her own or counseling. Yeah, she's doing really good. She puts up with us, so that's pretty cool.
I don't know. I found this group of men at this table to be some of the best gentlemen I know. I remember George.
Have you met us?
Don't tell anyone.
You're gonna fucking ruin our reputation.
Don't
I
spread
think
that
we're
word.
officially
You'll ruin your reputation by
gang
saying
affiliated now.
No, but for real though, because like George, his very first class with the academy, I remember I had to be like, "Can you please stop raising your hand?" I think his second class, I didn't get a lunch or a break that day.
Yeah.
Because every break he was asking me questions and having a dialogue. And then in between he'd have people on the out send me emails.
Yeah, try to get a job 4 years to the game.
So cool. It doesn't surprise me, George.
And then eventually sending me his own emails and be like, "Can you help me with my resume?" I don't know anything about resumes. Like,
I just wanted you to look at my resume. I didn't give a shit if you fixed it.
Yeah.
he sure did it. I kept looking at it a couple times. I was like, I should give some feedback. I'm not a resume expert. That's not my expertise. But just seeing that determination and then having to work with him for a little while before he abandoned me, it's fine. I've forgiven him now. Right. Just seeing that hard work and determination, and, you know, he hit the ground running and has continued to do the work, right? Still worry about his coping skills and like, okay, make sure you've taken care of yourself. But
Yeah.
right, that stuff's important. But also when I met you, right? We met while I was planning. I was in the middle of facilitating the PFCA conference, not last year, but the year before. And this guy kept following me around. Every little break I had, there was a conversation. How could I help? How do I support? Right? And it really told me a lot about his character. I think actually through you, we've spent a little bit more time and had some more real conversations recently. But it made a difference. And from the moment I met you, you came with these two. So I was like, all right, he's going to be all right.
Yeah. And Jesse was our connector, you know, so
Yeah.
it's
Well,
just,
you know, that event was the first time where I'd been in a whole room full of peer supports since I'd been out.
yeah, it was pretty fucking
Yeah.
cool, dude.
Like I was like, oh my gosh, my people. You know,
The energy in that space.
amazing.
You know, out of many, and I've done lots of events. I've done events now with thousands of people. But that conference was such a source of pride and joy.
Yeah.
Because every time, I mean, this room had 300 people in, and I knew every single one of them.
Awesome.
Right? That's just
impressive.
a cool community to have that support and to see they're all doing good work. Right? And whether it's reentry peer support, whether it's substance use peer support, whether it's young people, like all of that just making a difference, and how diverse we get to use our experiences. And I just wish the rest of the system recognized the value that we bring to the table. I wish that you didn't have to get degrees and that we could easily move up with our life experience, because we bring so much to the table. We save our system so much money, and we do good work and we have good outcomes.
No.
The problem is nobody tracks it. Nobody's paying attention to that. But it's the folks in that room that change people's lives. It's not just the medication. It's not the counseling. It's us being like, you know what? Hey, I've gone through some hard stuff too. You're going to get through this. Let's figure out the resources.
Yeah, and it was
Make that
interesting
happen.
when we were at parole last week. That was the first time I'd asked him, and I was like, how many of you guys been to prison? And like every single person on that sideline raised their hand.
Except blame me.
Oh no, you're in the gang for sure.
It's funny. We were at a training not too long ago, and they asked who was justice impacted. Everybody raised their hand. The lady next to me, for whatever reason, I don't remember why. I think just the group we were in, I thought everybody there was justice impacted, and I was right. I was like, "You're not justice impacted." She goes, "Oh no, my dad went to prison, but Guess
Yeah.
what, lady? You're fucking justice
Yeah.
impacted too.
Yeah.
Because your
Yeah.
dad didn't go to prison by himself. He took your young ass, however old you were, to prison with you.
You absolutely. I went from my dad being my primary caretaker. He had full custody of me. I was like one of the youngest kiddos in Arizona for a father to have full custody of,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah, that number isn't high.
no, it's not high at all. And full custody to I'm about to turn 5 and he's gone behind bars. Like that was an experience where my entire world got ripped upside down. I was suddenly with caregivers that had not been my primary caretakers, right? And even then there was a whole bunch of bouncing around in that time frame. I was with my grandparents, I was with my mom at the end, and like it was just drastically different life and I had no idea, right? I can't even comprehend. And suddenly only being able to see my dad through glass, like long periods of time without a hug. Like it changed us forever. But also I look at it on the flip side. I now have a letter from my dad tattooed on me. I would have never had letters from my dad if it wasn't for the fact that he went behind bars.
No.
Right? That experience shifted him for much of my life, that I had an amazing couple of years when he got out until got into a motorcycle accident. And that's a different story for a different day. But, you know, it dramatically shifted everything. He went from making good money working as a paralegal and in the insurance business to nobody hiring him, to him being a massive like saw operator. He was pushing, you know, hundreds of pounds of wood into a saw. Like, talk about a huge difference in how life operates.
Thankfully, things have gotten better. They're still worlds away from where they should be. We went to an event, my buddy Justin and I, with a bunch of HR leaders from the Valley. And there was a lady there who used to work at a trash company. They paid $15 an hour to do what? Pick up trash. And they wouldn't hire. And that's not, I'm not saying that's the space that we have to be in, but they wouldn't hire people with a justice involved background. That's just such an old school mentality. If you're really talking about safer communities, we have to have options. And us at this table, we create our own options, right? We're going to open the doors. We're going to get through stuff. We're going to figure it out, you know, but not everybody has that. Not everybody's gotten there. And to just continue to exclude people, yeah, come on home, but stay over there.
Yeah.
You can come home, but you can't sit at the table with us. Just go over there.
Yeah.
And make $14 an hour and figure out how to pay your rent and your back child support and your this and your that and
rent's $2,000.
And you got parole fees.
Yeah.
And you got
Oh,
probation
yeah,
fees.
yeah.
And you
And let's hope you don't need the DUI monitor in your car
Yeah.
or any other type of.
And let's hope you don't have kids.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause that's
Yeah, that
expensive as well.
economic disparity, you know, for one of the things that I've observed in the last 3 years since I've been out is it's like, yeah, you can work in recovery and, state of the trades, but don't come over here, right? Like, don't look over here. It's been troubling. I mean, I'm not going to name the company, but even when I was in the Second Chance Center, there was individuals that were going and working only 90 days at this concrete company. And they were like, well, why are they only working 90 days? Oh, they didn't want to insure them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so we told them never to come back to Second Chance again.
Yeah.
You know, it's troubling because we have gentlemen that had gone and done a significant amount of time, walked in, they're professional drywall guys, and then they're coming out 20 years later. Why would we put them in that position to be doing drywall? There should be other options. And and George and I are working on the education part. We really want, like this guy we talked to today, 41 years. He's like has all the education and intelligence. And,
guy who's incarcerated.
Yeah, guy who's incarcerated. No computer skills. 0. What are you going to do with that man?
Yeah. You can't even apply for a job these days.
No.
That's all done on the computer.
Yeah. No computers in there for him to work on.
Such a shame. One of the coolest things, right, as we talk about second chance employers or fair chance employers, I got to be a part of Valley Leadership's program, they've got a badge system. Because we often we have these lists of folks that will hire someone with a background, but what I envision for this world is more than that. Yes, we want folks to hire, but that's the bare minimum. You've got to be willing to recognize the support that folks need, right? You got to recognize that they might have to suddenly leave to go drop a UA. That you might have parole or probation coming into your place of business for a quick question, or just verifying that they're there. Right? You've got to create that supportive environment, opportunities for growth and leadership, opportunities for them to excel in this work, whatever business it is, right? It's more than just hiring them. That's the bare minimum, right? But how do you make sure it's a safe environment? I've also seen some of these employers and they hire them and then they're like, oh, well, you should just be grateful you have a job with us so we can treat you however we want. That's not okay.
No.
We shouldn't treat other humans that way, period. And so recognizing it's one of the first things they've seen, trying to make a difference and say, okay, great. You can have the lowest badge because you hired someone with a background.
Right.
But now, how do you take that a step further? And how do you go past
How do you
that?
create that path of leadership for them, or whatever skills that they'd be able to tap into? And we had that secretary, United States Assistant Secretary, right?
Secretary of Labor.
Yeah, and he was talking about how these guys that have these really good skills, and what they would do is somebody that was a sniper, right? They moved them into doing some type of engineering work.
Yeah.
But they saw the value, right? So if you see the value, provide the necessary training within your organization to help catapult their career, or either that, prepare them to, to have other options in their life too, as well,
Yeah.
And we could pull that back to us too on peer support, because we can train, like when you think justice impacted, you think drug addicts, you think all the labels that you want to put on stuff. There's all the scary pictures, right? There's all this, and they're going to steal, and they're going to, but then there's also, when I walk into a job, no one considers, hey, I'm going to an employer. I'm going to have to talk about the worst moments of my life to a complete stranger every single time I apply for a job. So how can we do that safely? And when you talk about trauma-informed hiring practices and educating, like, hey, maybe you don't want to ask, you're willing to hire justice-impacted people. That's great. Maybe you don't want to ask them, hey, what's the craziest thing you saw in prison?
Yeah.
Right? Like that kind of stuff, because it's going to stigmatize.
I wasn't supposed to ask that your first day on the job. My bad.
We're a different community, but in the regular world.
Yeah,
And it's just, it's something that we as peer supports, as people with lived experience, as healthcare professionals, as behavioral health, whatever labels you want to put on the stuff, that's stuff that we can teach people how to do it. Because then when you do wade into that pool and allow that population to come in, it changes the world. It will change your whole organization, because when people like us turn a fucking corner, we end up with 2 master's degrees. We end up buying our own houses.
That's right.
We end up running behavioral health facilities. That's the product you get. And if you're able to learn how to facilitate that, you can grow your whole entire business. A really cool story that we happen to know, a major flooring company, right? I'm going to leave all the names and all the other stuff out of it, but a major flooring company was hiring justice-impacted people. They got bought out by private equity. Private equity came in and said, we can't have all these justice-impacted people here, but they kind of seen what was going on. And what they did, one of the top, let's just say top 3 flooring companies in the United States, from the top down, they changed their policies, their HR policies, because of the performance levels of these justice-impacted people at a business that they didn't even want them there in the first place. And now they're all in leadership roles. And it's just, it's so awesome to be a part of that. And this, granted, we have ways to go and miles and miles and miles to go, but it's so awesome to see that stuff and to celebrate those wins, right? Because I know you said what your dad went through. I know what that was like. I got my first felony at 21, 30 years ago. And it was kind of like that. I couldn't touch anything. I couldn't go anywhere. I worked for, I think, $7 an hour somewhere.
Yeah, when I picked up my first marijuana felony at age 18, I was like, well, I got to go in the military. I got to go there fast. I walk in there. They're like, nope, class 6 felony. See you later.
Yeah.
I'm like, it was an ounce. It was an ounce of weed. Like, it was an ounce of weed, man. I was like, I really need some help here, some direction.
It's wild how much, as a world, we've set up limits, but also how it's changed. One of the things I love is early on, I had someone explain to me, it's transferable skills, right? I took the same level of hustle, right? Same level, right? Of, you know what, I'm going to go get high. I'm going to go get into trouble. I took that same amount into the work that I do now.
No.
And I see that time and time again with those of us with lived experience in this. You want a hard worker, you hire someone with background. You hire someone that's gone through some stuff because they're going to go to the ends of the earth most of the time.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
a couple of weird bad apples
Yeah,
out
absolutely.
Yeah, like I remember looking at a resume. This is an early development of Northside. I was like, you know what? This chick worked at Hickman's, dude, for 3 years. Don't say no to her.
Yeah, she'll outwork anybody here.
She'll
Yeah.
outwork anybody here.
She shoveled shit for 3 years.
I was like, that would be a really good move, and we move forward. She's still there.
there.
Yeah, she's still there.
It makes all the difference when you
Really does.
recognize the value of that, right? And that how do you take those same skills you use to do bad stuff now to do positive in this world? And the sky's the limit, right? Like we can do anything. We just have to remove some of these pointless barriers.
Yeah, that are said like when we signed that plea bargain.
You know what? Look, I don't want to talk a whole lot of politics, but our president is a felon, so that stupid question on every job application can go kick rocks now.
Yeah,
as
you
far
can be
as I'm
president. You just
concerned.
can't vote for the president.
Right.
Ass
It's-
backwards.
It's so dumb.
Ass backwards. Jesse
so
and I were talking today about prison, right? And the mindset in prison. And you can murder your whole entire family as long as everybody was over 18, and you can walk around that yard and you're a solid dude. Everybody thinks you're a good dude. Hey, man, that guy's all right. But if you fall into your addiction and you owe somebody on the yard money and you don't pay your bill, now you're a piece of shit. The family murdering person, he's solid because he doesn't have a dope debt. But like, it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense, right? That's
Yeah,
why we walked
none
away
of
from
it.
it. Unfortunately for us, we can't really walk away from politics
Yeah.
unless we want to move to a different country, which I really personally don't want to do.
I don't know. I've been looking.
When I had stuff hanging over my head and Johnny Helia looking for me, I was looking at other countries, but now I kind of like it here. I kind of want to stay and to be a part of this change and to be able to sit at this table and hang out with people like this and have these kind of conversations. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
We're getting into our last few minutes here. So as the guest, as a leader in this space, as a pioneer in this space, as an advocate, an ally, lived experience, all that stuff, what's the one thing you want to leave all 1.75 of our viewers with?
I think the biggest thing, right, is be human and be real, right? One of the biggest things that I think has gotten me through some of the hardest moments in my life is just being real about it. It's hard. I can lie and be like, oh, it's rainbows, butterflies, and sunshines, but that's not fair. Because then it looks as though I don't have those hard moments too, right? And I think we've got to keep that realness in our stories while providing the hope, right? And how do we keep going even in those hard moments?
No.
Just keep chugging along.
No, Jesse says it all the time. Like getting sober, that's not going to solve your fucking problems, right? Shit gets a lot worse when you get sober until you figure out how to handle it, how to move through it. Because now, holy shit, I have to pay a bill because all of a sudden I do want to live in a building, right?
Yeah.
I do want somewhere to go. I've lost a lot. Like we're talking about education, right? At 50 years old, most of my peers are planning for some sort of retirement. I'm not anywhere near that, right? So it's a different and being able early on in the recovery to move through the shame and guilt. I was like, man, I'm 45. Why change? Why? Because who knows how much time I got left, and I don't want my fucking 50 to be like my 45. So let me work as hard as I can. I don't want my 55 to be like my 50. So, but none of that shit's easy.
Yeah.
But there's the 30% rule. This is my rule. It takes 30% of the effort that I put into my addiction to be happy and successful. My definition of happy and successful. I was telling the guys today at the prison, I'm like, man, I was up till 11:30 last night because I had emails and shit that I had to do for work. So I was going to be gone all day today. I was at another event yesterday. I had to get it done. I got up at 3:30 this morning. Guess what? I got 4 hours of sleep. That's 4 more hours than I would have gotten over 3 days in my addiction. Right? I still slept a shit ton more.
But I'm sure you still started your running, but man, I'm so tired.
Yeah, but I got double caffeine K-cups over there to get me through.
There you
This is
go.
number 4.
I pound the Red Bull.
Yeah.
We got to get through it. You got anything you want to leave them with tonight?
No, it was an incredible day. I'm still, decompressing emotionally from the amount of time we met today.
Yeah.
And the amount of positivity they had.
Absolutely.
It
Hey,
was
shout out to Santa Rita, dude.
Dude,
Santa
they
Rita,
are they are
ASPC
doing
Tucson,
it, man.
Staff down, deputy warden,
Yeah,
CO4, CO3s,
all in there.
all of them.
I mean, ready to just and there was a communication and connection level in there that was just like they're on it.
yeah.
They're on it, and we want to be a part of it.
So something you never hear on a prison yard.
Yeah.
I can't say never, but 1 out of 1,000 times you'll hear this. And the very first question we asked, this is 30 people who are incarcerated sitting in a room, whole bunch of staff sitting over there.
Over
that
300
asked to
years
be
worth
there.
of time.
And the guy, I was like, so what do you guys do here? And the guy's like, well, we try to make the environment better. I'm like, what do you mean environment? Like you're painting walls, raking rocks, you're talking about the social environment. What are we talking about? We're just trying to make it better for everybody, the staff and us. You never hear somebody who's incarcerated talk about the staff. Why? Because you might get beat up. You know, it's not necessarily because we really don't like staff. It's just because we're not supposed to like staff. And I don't want you to know that, hey, staff's all right. And they said this out in the open. So immediately for me, it showed me that, hey, these guys are much further along. And then we got into it, like Jeremy was saying, there was some heavy time in there. 40, and there's probably 7 of them, 41 years.
31
32
years, yeah.
Yeah, the one guy was
right there.
since 1981.
Yeah.
I was 7 when he went to prison. I'm 50 now.
Yeah.
Another
There's
guy,
like
32 years, 29 years.
And-
There's a lot of time
And
there.
these dudes were driving the cars. They're like,
Yeah.
this is what we want to do. We want to promote change. We want to help the young people.
Yep.
We want to build the community. We
Yeah.
everything. And it was something else.
and
it was
the-
mixed
so-
race.
so that
which
was
is a
really-
big deal
it
in prison,
really-
which
It
is
is a
really, really
big
cool.
deal.
And I really think it's the evolution of peer support and its effect on the incarceral system. I think we saw something more, more evolved
Yeah.
than as we did at Cimarron,
Yeah.
right? Which is our goal. Our goal is to get, what we've seen today. I mean,
Get that everywhere.
Yeah.
get that everywhere.
Change the culture.
The biggest win we got for me was that CO4 because we went to Cimarron to bring hope.
Yeah.
That was our mission. That's why we walked in
Yeah.
the door. And the CO4, who was a CO3 then, who saw the group, I didn't even remember she was there for our initial group.
Yeah.
She goes, yeah, when I saw you guys over there, you went to Cimarron, it was the first time I saw hope there.
Yeah.
And I was like, man,
Yeah.
that's like why we
That's-
fucking went
why
there.
that's why we're here.
That's literally
That's
why we
we're
fucking
here.
went there.
Yeah. So
And it was just that was my huge W for the day just to see that. So you got anything you want to leave us with? We got about a minute left.
Yeah, I'll be short and quick. So the people that I'm talking to are the people that maybe aren't necessarily bought into the stuff that we're doing. Maybe the family members, the employers, the community that doesn't really understand exactly what it is we're trying to do and why we do it. And what I would say to you is this. For people like us, it's hard to come back into the community. It's hard to come out of addiction. And just because some of us may have done some bad things doesn't necessarily mean that we're bad people. Try to look at it as people that are sick, not bad. And when people pay their debt to society, I mean, like in our cases, some of us have done almost 2 decades. I mean, how long do we have to continue to be penalized for mistakes that we've made? We're human beings. And the reality is that if I want to have any chance of being a responsible, productive member of society, at some point, people are going to have to give me a chance. And people are going to have to give chances to other people like me. Because in my addiction, there were days when I was committing a dozen felonies before noon. So with people like me on the right track, not getting high, working, being a productive member of society, the impact that has on the community, my family, my neighbors, my employer is huge. And all it takes is a chance. You know, we want to be productive members of society. We don't want to spend the rest of our lives in prison. We want a chance. So for those of you that are maybe on the fence a little bit, give us a chance.
Give us a fucking chance. I just seen Holly on here. Holly runs the Manzanita unit.
Holly.
Manzanita unit's awesome too.
Yeah,
Holly,
yeah.
good to
Holly,
see you.
shout out.
So we love all you guys. Thank you all for being here. Holly, I'm going to give you a call tomorrow. I don't have your work number, so if you can send it to me a message, that would be great.
I might have it.
Haley might have it. We'll see. But we love you guys. Stay safe. Like Jesse said, give everybody a chance. Always add love. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, gentlemen.